The Imperial Palace trembled as the final battle raged across Terra. The Emperor of Mankind stood amid the ruins and ash, senses flooded with the despair of a dying world. He had known this day might come. Whispered in ancient prophecies and half-forgotten visions was a warning that humanity's brightest savior could one day cast the longest shadow. The prophecy had always spoken of him, yet throughout the ages, speculation had swirled. Some had feared it might instead refer to Horus, the beloved son now wielding the raw power of chaos. Others whispered that the demon Samus, a creeping horror lurking at the fringes of reality, could be the true inheritor of that dark mantle. But the truth was far worse. The Dark King was not merely a being of chaos, but the embodiment of absolute destruction, annihilation without purpose, ruin without reason. And as traitorous legions clawed at the palace gates and the warp itself screamed with chaos, the Emperor knew the truth. The prophecy had never been about them. It was about this moment. Would the Dark King rise this day? For centuries, the Emperor had shunned all trappings of godhood. He forbade prayer and denied any divinity within himself, precisely to avert the doom foretold. The prophecy had long been murmured by Eldar seers and human mystics alike, that should the Emperor take upon himself the mantle of a god, a Dark King would rise, a fifth ruinous power born from mankind's hope, twisted into its greatest horror. It was a fate he swore to avoid. Every imperial edict against worship, every lecture extolling reason over faith, had been to starve that future of belief. Yet here, at the end of everything, the very choice he dreaded was before him. Outside, Horus, once the beloved warmaster, now the arch-traitor, unleashed unimaginable power, the power of chaos itself. The Emperor could feel his favored son's presence like a blazing sun of warp energy. Horus had become a true vessel of the dark gods, a monster of godlike might. In his heart, the Emperor realized a terrible truth. In his current state, even he might not defeat Horus. A cacophony of explosions rattled the throne room's shattered walls. Each blast underscored the impossible stakes. If Horus prevailed, humanity would perish in an age of endless shadow. All that the Emperor had built, the Great Crusade, the Imperium, would be ground to dust or corrupted beyond recognition. That future was intolerable. The Emperor's golden armor was cracked and bloodied from battle, and the weight of millennia of hope and sorrow bore down on him. He clenched his jaw, recalling every sacrifice made to reach this moment. Sanguinius had fallen heroically on Horus's flagship, buying precious time with his life. Now only the Emperor stood between Horus and total victory. A grim decision coalesced in his mind. Perhaps to save humanity, he would have to embrace the very power he feared. The irony was not lost on him. The final hope might lie in flirting with utter damnation. Drawing a shuddering breath, the Emperor made his choice. He reached out with his vast psychic will and drank deeply of the warp's energy. It was more than just tapping into the immaterium. He flung open every psychic conduit of his soul, siphoning the raw, seething power of chaos into himself on a scale unseen in history. The air around him ignited with actinic light. Lightning coiled and danced across his form as an obsidian aura engulfed the Emperor. His eyes blazed like twin suns. Power, enormous and terrible, flooded his being, and for one fleeting moment, the Emperor felt capable of anything. The very fabric of reality trembled at his presence. Yet with that power came catastrophic consequences. Nearby, the Emperor's own loyal custodians cried out in agony as uncontrolled energies rippled from him. The closest warriors were reduced to blackened husks in an instant, their gene-forged bodies unable to withstand the godlike aura. Golden walls and pillars cracked under the psychic onslaught, molten tears of metal running down imperial icons. The emperor hovered above the scorched ground, a wrathful figure wreathed in lightning and shadow, barely recognizable as the man he once was. In that instant, he teetered on the edge of the abyss foreseen by the prophecy. The Dark King, that dreaded spectre, was no longer just a whisper of what might be. It was happening. He was becoming it. Within the emperor's mind, alarm bells tolled. He could feel an alien will tugging at his soul, an echo of dark triumph from the chaos gods as they sensed their prize within reach. The prophecy's words throbbed in his memory. A hero crowned in darkness, humanity's hope turned bane. Each syllable a warning, each passing second a step closer to irreversible corruption. Then through the maelstrom of psychic noise, a human voice cut through. Clear, courageous, and impossibly familiar. "My lord, stop. This is not the way," it cried. The emperor, in his thunderous ascension, turned blazing eyes downward. Olanius Person, a simple man by appearance, scarred, weathered, clad in dust-covered fatigues, stood before the emperor's seething manifestation. Person was one of the fabled perpetuals, an immortal warrior who had fought beside the emperor in ages long past. To see this lost friend here, now, at the very brink of doom, stunned the emperor. At Person's side stood others drawn by fate to this moment. John Grammaticus, bearing the weight of untold eras in his weary gaze, and Gaviel Loken, the once thought-dead space marine who remained unbroken in loyalty. They were frail mortals against the backdrop of a godly tempest, yet none flinched. Person stepped forward, fearless and resolute, his voice somehow steady in the roaring gale of warp energy. "You must remember who you are," Person shouted, shielding his eyes against the blinding light pouring off the emperor. In that moment, his words echoed with the weight of all humanity. "We believe in you, not as a god, but as a man. Stay true to that, or we are lost." Each word struck the emperor's heart more sharply than any demon's claw. Person reminded him of the very principles he had once instilled in others, that mankind's strength lay in unity, reason, and hope, not in godly powers. Beside Person, Loken dropped to one knee, not in worship, but in pleading loyalty. "My lord," Loken implored, his voice heavy with conviction, "do not give in to the darkness. We will follow you, even into death, but not into corruption." Grammaticus raised an artifact, perhaps some ancient talisman of the Eldar, its faint glow symbolizing the truth of the prophecy. In its light, the emperor glimpsed a reflection of himself, not a radiant savior, but a towering shadow wreathed in lightning, the Dark King incarnate. Horror washed over him. This was the future he had vowed to prevent, now unfolding by his own hand. The emperor's fury and desperation faltered, suddenly tempered by doubt. Person's unwavering faith acted like a lifeline, pulling him back from the precipice. The howling voices of chaos urging him onward were met by the familiar, mortal voice of a friend urging him to stop. He stood at a crossroads of destiny. On one side, unlimited power at the cost of his soul. On the other, the uncertain hope of victory as a mere man. Time seemed to slow as the emperor wrestled with the monumental decision. In that suspended moment, he recalled a quiet conversation many years ago, Malcador the Sigillite warning him in hushed tones about the final temptation that would come. Malcador had foreseen that in his darkest hour, the emperor would have to choose what manner of savior to be. Only now did the emperor fully grasp what his old friend meant. Cause and effect crystallized in his mind. If he embraced godhood, he might destroy Horus and save the Imperium, but at a terrible cost. Humanity itself would cease to exist as a free race. becoming nothing more than the fuel for his ascension, their wills subsumed into his divine presence. He would fulfill the prophecy and doom mankind to a future ruled by a new tyrant god, himself. Yet even this choice was a victory for chaos. The ruinous powers had played their own gamble. If he ascended, he would destroy a part of himself, shedding his final resistance to divinity and becoming the very thing he had fought against, the fifth god of chaos. If he refused, he would remain mortal and vulnerable, and there was a very real chance that Horus would triumph, ensuring mankind's total damnation. It was an agonizing paradox. Either choice led to destruction, of himself, of humanity, or of everything. Heart-pounding, the Emperor made the fateful decision. With an act of will as mighty as drawing the power in the first place, he reined in his psychic might. Let it go. With that silent plea, he cast off the godlike energies he had absorbed. A keening sound like a dying star filled the air as the Emperor forced the warp's power out of himself and back from whence it came. Lightning arced away from his body, and the blinding glow in his eyes dimmed. The obsidian sphere of force that had surrounded him began to crack and crumble. The Emperor threw back his head and roared. Whether in pain, defiance, or triumph, even he could not tell. The sound resonated across both the material and immaterial realms. In an explosive release, a wave of holy light blasted outward from him in all directions. Person and the others were knocked off their feet but unhurt, shielded from harm by the Emperor's final gentle control. The wave rippled far beyond the palace, across Terra's embattled surface, and even up through the warp-tainted corridors of Horus's battle barge vengeful spirit. Demons shrieked as they were instantly banished, torn from reality by the purifying blast. The unnatural darkness smothering the Imperial Palace lifted for a brief moment, allowing the beleaguered defenders a gasp of hope. Even Horus himself, far above, must have felt the sudden shift, a disturbance in the warp, as if the chaos gods themselves recoiled in rage. When the brilliant flare faded, the Emperor collapsed to one knee, mortal once more and greatly diminished, but himself. Smoke curled from his scorched armor. His face, lined with exhaustion and sorrow, was human again, not the mask of a chaos-fueled demigod. The throne room was quiet now, save for the distant sounds of battle outside. Olania's person slowly rose and approached, awed at what had transpired. The Emperor looked upon his old friend with gratitude and newfound clarity. He placed a hand on Person's shoulder, a gesture of thanks unspoken in words. The temptation had passed. He had stepped back from godhood's brink and denied the Dark King its birth. The prophecy had been thwarted, at least for now. The Emperor knew the cost of this choice. He was weaker than before, perhaps too weak to survive the coming fight. But in that weakness lay purity. He would face Horus as a father, fighting to save his son, as a man defending his species, not as a fallen god enslaved to chaos. Slowly, the Emperor stood tall once more, drawing his sword. Its blade gleamed in the hazy light, still potent with righteous fury. Around him, the surviving custodians and companions gathered, renewed fire in their eyes. They had witnessed their emperor's triumph over temptation and were emboldened by it. Beyond these walls, the final confrontation awaited. Horus, the betrayer, still brooded on the vengeful spirit, daring his father to come. The Emperor could sense the pull of that final duel, the strands of fate tightening around the two figures upon whom the galaxy now hinged. He took a step forward, then another, each footfall resolute. This was the path he chose, uncertain and perilous, but truly his. The tension that had built through every trial now hung at its peak. The climax of the Emperor's journey was at hand. As he prepared to teleport to Horus's side for their ultimate battle, the Emperor spared one last glance back at Terra's skies, where the warp storm clouds had momentarily parted. In the brief calm, he heard not the hateful whisper of prophecy, but the steady beat of humanity's collective heart. They were still alive. He still had a chance to save them. The Emperor allowed himself a faint, determined smile. The future was not yet written. The Dark King's crown lay shattered at his feet, its promise of absolute power rejected. Though the Chaos Gods roared in anger and dismay, the Emperor had proven that even fate could be challenged by choice. The prophecy that had loomed over him for so long was woven into this moment. And in this moment, he defied it. With a flash of light, the master of mankind vanished to face his traitorous son, carrying with him the hopes of all humanity. The echoes of his decision still resonated in the air, a testament to the Emperor's unyielding spirit. He would battle Horus not as the Dark King of Chaos, but as the guardian of humanity. The duel that ensued was cataclysmic, waged across both the material and immaterial realms. Horus, fully empowered by the Chaos Gods, matched and then surpassed the Emperor's psychic might. Their battle transcended time and space, manifesting in various forms, from physical combat to metaphysical contests. In a final, desperate gambit, the Emperor summoned the remnants of his strength. As Horus prepared to deliver the killing blow, the Emperor unleashed a psychic attack of unparalleled intensity, annihilating Horus utterly. Yet this victory came at a great cost. The Emperor was mortally wounded, his body shattered beyond natural healing. In the aftermath, the Emperor was interred upon the Golden Throne, a life-sustaining device designed to maintain his psychic presence and continue guiding humanity. For 10,000 years, he has remained in this state, a godlike figure worshipped by trillions across the Imperium. This deification, however, carries a perilous irony. The Emperor had always shunned godhood, fearing that such reverence could lead to the rise of the Dark King, a chaos deity born from humanity's misguided faith. The ruinous powers maintain that this chaos god will emerge at some point as prophesied, given that time flows differently to chaos, and the Dark King's servants and dominion already exist. The Emperor's confinement to the Golden Throne and the worship he receives may inadvertently set the stage for this dark ascension. Should the Emperor ascend to godhood, it is uncertain whether he would become a benevolent deity or the very Dark King he sought to prevent. Thus, while the Emperor's soul remained his own on that fateful day, the shadow of the Dark King lingers still, a testament to the precarious balance between faith and corruption. The prophecy was denied but not defeated, its threat echoing through the millennia, a dark mirror to the light of humanity's enduring spirit.